She was just a care aide from Queens. He was a billionaire tech mogul in a coma. For nearly a year, she talked to him every day, while everyone mocked her for treating a vegetable like a human being.
Good morning, Nicholas. It's a beautiful day outside.
The doctors said he couldn't hear. His family said she was wasting her breath, but when Nicholas Vale finally opened his eyes after 11 months...
Serenity, stay.
How do you know my name? You've been unconscious.
I heard you. Every day I heard your voice.
The woman who changed his diapers had unknowingly captured his heart. But when his billionaire family discovers their son has fallen for the black single mother they see as beneath them, they'll stop at nothing to tear them apart. Will love conquer the ultimate class divide? Or will a mother's desperate need to survive force her to walk away from the man who hurt her heart in his darkest hour? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. The morning sun shone through the windows of Manhattan Care Center, one of New York's most expensive medical facilities. Serenity Blake rushed through the staff entrance, her worn sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. She was running, late again. "Mama, my shoelace broke," her 5-year-old daughter Zoe had announced, just as they were heading out the door of their small apartment in Queens. Those extra 5 minutes spent fixing it with tape might cost Serenity her job if Nurse Wilcox was in one of her moods. Serenity quickly changed into her blue scrubs in the locker room. At 28, she still turned heads with her warm brown eyes and bright smile, though she rarely noticed the attention. She was too busy raising Zoe alone and working double shifts as a private care aide. "Cutting it close again, Blake," said Nurse Wilcox, checking her watch as Serenity hurried to the nurse's station. "I'm sorry, Ma'am. My daughter's shoelace. Broken. Save it." Nurse Wilcox cut her off, handing her a thick folder. "You've been reassigned. You're now primary care for Nicholas Vale in room 718. Serenity's eyes widened. Everyone knew about Nicholas Vale, the 31-year-old tech billionaire who'd been in a coma for almost a year after a yacht accident. His family owned half of Manhattan, it seemed. "Why me?" Serenity asked. "His last 3 aides quit. Family's demanding. The pay's higher, though," Nurse Wilcox said with a shrug. "Don't mess this up, Blake." Serenity nodded and headed toward the elevator. The higher pay would help with Zoe's school supplies and maybe even pay off some of her student loans. When she entered room 718, she was struck by how cold it felt, despite the expensive machines beeping softly. The large window overlooked Central Park, and sunlight fell across the still form on the bed. Nicholas Vale looked nothing like the smiling man whose face had been all over the news. His dark hair had grown long, his face was pale, and his once athletic frame had thinned considerably. But there was still something handsome about him, Serenity thought, then quickly pushed the thought away. This was her patient, nothing more. "Good morning, Mr. Vale," she said cheerfully, setting down her supplies. "I'm Serenity Blake, and I'll be taking care of you from now on." She opened the curtains wider, letting more sunlight in. It's a beautiful day outside. People are jogging in the park, and the flowers are starting to bloom. As she spoke, she gently began her morning routine, checking his vitals, adjusting his position to prevent bed sores, and cleaning his face with a warm cloth. "Let's get you freshened up, shall we?" she said, carefully shaving his face and trimming his overgrown hair. "There, much better. You'd want to look your best if you could see yourself." The door suddenly opened, and a tall woman in an expensive suit walked in, followed by a doctor Serenity didn't recognize. "Who are you?" the woman demanded, looking Serenity up and down. "I'm Serenity Blake, Mr. Vale's new care aide," she answered, standing up straight. "I'm Eleanor Vale, Nicholas's mother," the woman said coldly. "Why are you talking to him? He can't hear you." "Actually, Mrs. Vale, some studies suggest coma patients may be aware of their surroundings," Serenity said politely. "I believe treating Mr. Vale with dignity helps with his care." Eleanor Vale's perfectly made-up face tightened. "Just do your job without the unnecessary chatter. We pay enough for this facility." After they left, Serenity sighed and looked at Nicholas. "Well, now I see why the other aides quit," she whispered. "But don't worry, I'm not going anywhere." Days turned into weeks, and Serenity fell into a routine. She'd drop Zoe at school, work her shift with Nicholas, pick up Zoe, help with homework, make dinner, and then fall into bed exhausted but content. Every day she talked to Nicholas while she cared for him. She told him about Zoe's latest art project, the weather, or news headlines. She read to him from books she thought he might enjoy. "Girl, why do you waste your breath?" asked Tanya, another aide who sometimes helped her turn Nicholas. "He can't hear you." "We don't know that," Serenity replied. "Look at you, talking to him like he's your boyfriend," Tanya teased. "Even if he could hear you, you think a billionaire like him would choose someone like us? We're just the diaper changers." "I'm not looking to be chosen," Serenity said firmly. "I just believe everyone deserves to be treated with respect, whether they can respond or not." One day, Serenity was changing the sheets, while Nicholas's younger sister, Cassandra, sat by the window typing on her phone. "You know," Cassandra said suddenly, "you're the first aide who's lasted more than a month." Serenity smiled. "I like my job. Even when my mother treats you like you're invisible? Your brother is my priority, not your mother's approval." Serenity said, smoothing the blanket over Nicholas. Cassandra studied her curiously. "You really care about him, don't you? Not because he's Nicholas Vale, but just because he's a person." "Everyone deserves care, Miss Vale. Call me Cassie," she said with a small smile. "And thank you for treating my brother like a human being. Not everyone does anymore." The Vale family visited rarely. Eleanor once a month for exactly 1 hour. Nicholas's father, James, even less frequently. And his older brother, Marcus, only when the press was around. Only Cassie came regularly, sometimes bringing fresh flowers or sitting quietly while Serenity worked. The staff's attitudes ranged from indifference to mockery of Serenity's dedication. "You talk to him like he's going to answer back someday," laughed Dr. Peterson one afternoon, as he did his quick check of Nicholas's vitals. "Maybe he will," Serenity said. "Blake, he's been unresponsive for almost a year. The chances of recovery are still chances," she finished for him. "And until proven otherwise, I believe he can hear us. So maybe we should be careful what we say." The doctor shook his head and left. That evening, after everyone had gone, Serenity sat beside Nicholas's bed reading from The Great Gatsby, which Cassie had mentioned was his favorite book. He had come a long way to this blue lawn, and his dream must have seemed so close that he could hardly fail to grasp it. She read softly. She closed the book and sighed. "I should go pick up Zoe from my neighbor's apartment, but I'll be back tomorrow, Nicholas. Sleep well." As she gathered her things, she didn't notice Nicholas's finger twitch slightly. The next morning, Serenity arrived early. It was exactly 1 year since she had started caring for Nicholas. She placed a small vase of daisies on his bedside table. "Happy anniversary," she said with a laugh. "1 year of me talking your ear off. You must be tired of my voice by now." As she checked his IV, she continued, "Zoe lost her first tooth last night. She was so excited about the tooth fairy coming. I put $1 under her pillow, all I could manage this week, I'm afraid." She gently turned his head to wipe his face. "You know, Nicholas, sometimes I wonder what you were like before the accident. Cassie tells me stories, but I wish I could have known you." She adjusted his blanket, tucking it around his shoulders the way she always did. "Your company launched that new phone yesterday. It's all over the news. Your team is doing well, keeping things going while you're taking this little break." As she stood to open the curtains, a faint sound made her turn. Nicholas's eyes were open. Serenity froze, hardly daring to believe what she was seeing. His blue eyes, unfocused at first, slowly moved around the room until they landed on her. "Nicholas," she whispered, rushing to his side and pressing the emergency call button. "Can you hear me?" His lips moved, but no sound came out. Serenity quickly grabbed a cup of water with a straw and held it to his lips. He took a small sip, wincing slightly. "It's okay," she soothed. "Take it slow, you've been asleep for a while." His eyes never left her face. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible, rough from disuse. But the single word he said changed everything. "Serenity." The room suddenly filled with medical staff. Dr. Peterson pushed past her, shining a light in Nicholas's eyes. Nurses checked machines and called out numbers. Someone pulled Serenity aside. "How long has he been awake?" Dr. Peterson demanded. "Just a few minutes," she answered, her heart pounding. "He recognized me. He said my name." The doctor looked skeptical. "That's unlikely. He's probably just confused. But when the initial examination was done, and the room quieted slightly, Nicholas's eyes searched until they found Serenity again. "Serenity," he repeated, a little stronger this time. "Stay." Dr. Peterson stared in disbelief. "How does he know? Your name?" Before she could answer, the door burst open. Eleanor Vale rushed in, followed by her husband and son. Behind them came Cassie, her face tear-streaked but smiling. "Nicholas!" Eleanor cried, pushing past the medical staff to reach her son. "Oh, my darling boy, you're awake." Nicholas looked confused, his eyes still seeking Serenity, who had been pushed to the back of the room. "Mother," he said hoarsely. "Where's Serenity?" "Eleanor's." Smile faltered. "Who?" "Serenity," he repeated. "I need to see her." Eleanor turned, her eyes narrowing when she spotted Serenity. "You mean the aide?" "Nicholas, darling, you need to rest. The doctors need to examine you." "No," Nicholas said, his voice gaining strength. "I want Serenity here." The room fell silent. Eleanor's face hardened as she looked from her son to the care aide and back again. "How do you even know her name?" she demanded. "You've been unconscious." "I heard her," Nicholas said simply. "Every day I heard her voice." All eyes turned to Serenity, who stood frozen by the door, her heart racing as Nicholas Vale, awake, at last, spoke the words that would change both their lives forever. "She was the only one who treated me like I was still here." The next few hours were chaos. Doctors rushed in and out of Nicholas's room, running tests and checking reflexes. Reporters gathered outside the hospital, alerted by someone on staff that the billionaire had finally awakened. Security guards were posted at every entrance. Through it all, Nicholas refused to let Serenity leave his side. "I need her to stay," he insisted whenever someone suggested she step out. Eleanor Vale paced the room, her designer heels clicking against the floor. She kept shooting suspicious glances at Serenity, who stood quietly in the corner. "Nicholas, darling," Eleanor said, "you need to rest, and Miss Blake has other duties, I'm sure." "No," Nicholas said firmly. His voice was still weak, but there was steel behind it. "She stays." Dr. Peterson cleared his throat. "Actually, Mrs. Vale, having a familiar presence might help your son remain calm. Miss Blake has been his primary caregiver for a year." Eleanor's lips thinned into a tight line. "Fine, for now." When the doctors finally left, Nicholas's father, James, stepped forward. He was a tall, imposing man with silver hair and the same blue eyes as his son. "Son," he said, awkwardly patting Nicholas's hand, "we've been waiting for this day for so long." Nicholas nodded tiredly. "How long was I out?" "Almost a year," Cassie said, moving closer to her brother's bed. "Do you remember anything about the accident?" Nicholas frowned, then winced as if the movement hurt. "The yacht. There was a storm. Then nothing." His eyes found Serenity again, until I started hearing her voice. Eleanor made a dismissive sound. "That's just confusion, dear. Very common after trauma." "It's not confusion, Mother," Nicholas said, his gaze never leaving Serenity's face. "I heard her every day reading to me, talking about her daughter, telling me about the weather, the news, everything." A heavy silence fell over the room. Marcus Vale, Nicholas's older brother, who had been standing by the window on his phone, finally looked up. "That's impossible," he said flatly. "You were in a coma." "Apparently not as deeply as you all thought," Nicholas replied. Serenity felt her cheeks growing warm under everyone's stares. She hadn't expected this, that Nicholas had actually heard her all those months, that he remembered. "I should go check on my other patients," she said quietly, trying to ease the tension. "No," Nicholas said quickly, reaching for her hand. His grip was weak but determined. "Please stay, Serenity." The touch of his hand sent a strange flutter through her chest. She nodded, unable to refuse him. Eleanor's eyes narrowed at the gesture. "James, Marcus," she said sharply, "I need to speak with you outside." The three of them left the room, their hushed but heated voices barely audible through the closed door. Cassie moved to sit on the edge of Nicholas's bed. "Nick, you really remember things from while you were in the coma?" He nodded slowly. "Not everything, it's like fragments of dreams." But her voice, He looked at Serenity again. Her voice was always clear. It gave me something to hold on to. Serenity didn't know what to say. All those months of talking to him, reading to him, treating him like a person when everyone else had treated him like furniture. She'd never truly believed he could hear her. "You said my name," she finally managed. "How did you know what I looked like?" Nicholas smiled faintly. "I didn't. But I knew your voice. And I knew your heart." Cassie looked between them, her eyes wide. "Oh my God," she whispered. "This is like something out of a movie." The door opened and Eleanor returned, her face composed into a tight smile. "Nicholas needs to rest now," she announced, "and I've arranged for a private nurse to take over his care." "What?" Serenity and Nicholas spoke at the same time. "Mother, no," Nicholas protested. "I want Serenity to stay as my aide." Eleanor's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Darling, you're awake now. You need specialized rehabilitation, not just basic care. Miss Blake isn't qualified for that." "Mrs. Vale," Serenity began, "I understand your concerns, but sudden changes might be disorienting for Nicholas. Perhaps we could—" "It's Mr. Vale to you," Eleanor cut her off coldly. "And this isn't a discussion. I've already spoken to the hospital administration. You're being reassigned effective immediately." Nicholas struggled to sit up. "Mother, stop this. I make my own decisions." "Not right now, you don't," Eleanor replied. "You've been declared temporarily incapacitated. Your father and I have medical power of attorney until the doctors clear you." The color drained from Nicholas's face. "You can't do that." "It's already done," Eleanor said, her voice softening slightly. "It's for your own good, Nicholas. Now, Miss Blake, please leave. The new nurse will be here shortly." Serenity felt trapped. She needed this job for Zoe, for their small apartment, for everything. But the look in Nicholas's eyes broke her heart. "I'll be right outside," she promised him. "I'm not going far." As she walked out, she heard Nicholas say, "This isn't over, Mother." In the hallway, Serenity leaned against the wall, trying to process everything that had happened. A hand on her shoulder made her jump. "Don't let my mother scare you off," Cassie said quietly. "Nick's stubborn when he wants something, and he clearly wants you around." "I don't understand any of this," Serenity admitted. "Why would he remember me, of all people?" Cassie smiled sadly. "Because while the rest of us were waiting for him to wake up, you were the only one who acted like he was still here." Two security guards approached them. "Miss Blake, we need to escort you to HR." Cassie squeezed her arm. "Don't worry, this isn't over." Downstairs, Serenity was coldly informed that she had been reassigned to the geriatric ward, effective immediately. It wasn't a firing, but it felt like a punishment. "The Vale family has requested you have no further contact with Mr. Vale," the HR director said, not meeting her eyes. "He asked for me," Serenity protested. "He wants me there." "Mrs. Vale has power of attorney. Her wishes supersede his at this time." Serenity left the office feeling defeated. As she walked to the geriatric ward, her phone buzzed with a text from her neighbor who was watching Zoe. "Running late again," the text read. "Zoe's asking for dinner." Serenity sighed. Life didn't stop, even when everything turned upside down. She had a daughter to feed, bills to pay. Nicholas Vale might have awakened to a world that jumped at his command, but she lived in a different reality. For the next week, Serenity threw herself into her new duties, trying not to think about Nicholas. She heard rumors that he was making remarkable progress, that specialists had been flown in from Europe, that the Vale family had hired additional security to keep the press away. "You're awfully quiet these days," Tanya commented one afternoon as they took their lunch break together. "Just tired," Serenity replied. "Heard your billionaire's been asking for you," Tanya said, watching her closely. "Nurse Jenkins from the 7th floor said he gets angry every time they try to tell him you've been reassigned." Serenity's heart skipped a beat. "It doesn't matter. His mother made it clear I'm not welcome." "Since when do you give up so easily?" Tanya challenged. "The Serenity I know would stand up for what's right." "What's right is taking care of my daughter," Serenity said firmly. "I can't risk this job." That evening, as Serenity was helping Zoe with her reading homework, there was a knock at their apartment door. Frowning, she opened it to find Cassie Vale standing in the hallway, looking completely out of place in her expensive clothes. "Cassie, what are you doing here?" "May I come in?" Cassie asked, glancing nervously at the neighbor across the hall, who was staring openly. Serenity hesitated, then stepped aside. Her tiny apartment, with its second-hand furniture and Zoe's artwork covering the walls, felt even smaller with Cassie in it. "Mama, who's that?" Zoe asked, peering curiously from behind Serenity's legs. "This is Miss Cassandra," Serenity said. "She's a friend from work." Cassie knelt down to Zoe's level. "You must be Zoe. Your mom has told me so much about you." Zoe nodded solemnly. "Are you rich? You look rich." "Zoe," Serenity gasped, mortified, but Cassie just laughed. "I guess I am, but you know what? You have something much better than money." "What?" Zoe asked. "The best mom in the world," Cassie said, glancing up at Serenity with a smile. Serenity sent Zoe to finish her homework in her bedroom, then turned to Cassie. "Why are you here?" "Nicholas sent me," Cassie said, lowering her voice. "He's been asking for you every day. My mother told him you quit, but he didn't believe her. He's not doing well, Serenity." Serenity sank onto the couch. "What do you mean?" "He's refusing to cooperate with the new nurses. He barely eats. The doctors say his recovery has stalled." Cassie sat beside her. "He needs you. Your mother made it very clear." "My mother is terrified," Cassie interrupted. "She can't stand the idea that someone like you, someone without money or connections, might be important to Nicholas. Someone like me," Serenity repeated, stiffening. Cassie winced. "I didn't mean it like that. Look, my family, as we've always been about appearances, about staying within our circle. Nicholas was different even before the accident. He didn't care about any of that. And now, waking up to find his only real connection is with someone my mother considers beneath us. It's her worst nightmare. I'm not trying to insert myself into your brother's life," Serenity said firmly. "I was just doing my job." "Were you?" Cassie asked softly. "Reading to him every day? Telling him about your life? Treating him like he mattered when everyone else had given up? That's more than a job, Serenity." Serenity looked away, unable to deny it. Somewhere along the way, Nicholas had become more than just a patient to her. "What do you want from me, Cassie?" "Come back," Cassie pleaded. "I've convinced the hospital administrator to reinstate you as Nick's primary aide. Mother doesn't know yet, but by the time she finds out, it'll be too late to reverse it without causing a scene. And when she does find out, I can't afford to lose this job, Cassie. I have Zoe to think about." "Nicholas won't let that happen," Cassie assured her. "He's already regained enough strength to start challenging the power of attorney. His lawyers are working on it now. Once he's legally in control again, not even my mother can touch you." Serenity thought about Nicholas, his voice when he'd said her name, the way he'd reached for her hand, the fact that somehow, against all odds, he'd heard her when no one else thought he could. "When would I start?" she asked. Cassie's face lit up. "Tomorrow. I'll pick you up myself." The next morning, Serenity arrived at Nicholas's room with Cassie beside her. Her heart pounded as she pushed open the door. Nicholas was sitting up in bed, looking out the window. He seemed thinner, paler than when she'd last seen him. When he heard the door, he turned, his tired expression instantly transforming when he saw her. "Serenity," he said, a smile spreading across his face. "You came back?" She moved to his side, automatically checking his IV and the monitors beside him. "Your vitals are lower than they should be," she scolded gently. "Have you been giving the other nurses trouble?" "They're not you," he said simply. Their eyes met, and for a moment everything else faded away. "I'm here now," she said softly. "Promise you won't leave again?" There was vulnerability in his voice that tugged at her heart. "I promise." Cassie cleared her throat. "I'll leave you two alone, and I'll try to run interference with Mother for as long as possible." After she left, an awkward silence fell between them. "Your family thinks I've somehow manipulated you," Serenity finally said, busying herself with straightening his blankets. "My family sees threats everywhere," Nicholas replied. "They can't understand that while I was trapped in darkness, your voice was my light." Serenity felt her cheeks warm. Nick, he corrected. My friends call me Nick. I'm not. Sure, we're friends, she said hesitantly. I'm your care aide. You're much more than that, Serenity. His blue eyes held hers steadily. You kept me human when I could have just become a body in a bed. You gave me dignity when others took it away. You talked to me about real things, not just about how much money my company was making or what the press was saying. Serenity didn't know how to respond. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. Patients weren't supposed to wake up and remember their aides. Billionaires weren't supposed to look at single mothers from Queens like they were precious. You have a long recovery ahead, she said, changing the subject. Let's start by getting some food into you. The chart says you've barely been eating. Nick smiled wryly. The food tastes like cardboard. Well, then I'll just have to see what I can do about that, she replied, falling easily back into the caretaker role. Now let's go through your exercises. The sooner you get your strength back, the sooner you can get out of here. For the next hour, she helped him through the gentle physical therapy exercises the doctors had prescribed. He was weaker than she expected, his muscles atrophied from months of disuse. Tell me about your daughter, Nick said as she helped him stretch his arms. Zoe, right? She lost a tooth the night before I woke up. Serenity paused, still amazed by what he remembered. Yes, that's right. She's 5, smart as a whip and twice as sharp. She must take after her mother, Nick said with a smile. Serenity shook her head. She's her own person, stubborn, funny, always asking questions I don't know how to answer. Like what? Like why some kids have daddies and she doesn't? Or why we can't live in a big house like the ones on TV? Serenity sighed. The real world is hard to explain to a 5-year-old. What happened to her father? Nick asked quietly. Serenity stiffened slightly. He left when I told him I was pregnant. Said he wasn't ready to be tied down. His loss, Nick said, his voice hard. Then more gently, you've done an amazing job with her from everything you've told me. Before Serenity could respond, the door burst open. Eleanor Vale stood there, her face flushed with anger. What is the meaning of this? She demanded, her eyes fixed on Serenity. I explicitly forbade you from coming anywhere near my son. Mother, stop, Nick said firmly. I requested Serenity's return. You're not in your right mind, Eleanor snapped. You've been manipulated by this fortune hunter. Serenity flinched as if she'd been slapped. Mrs. Vale, I've never... Save. It, Eleanor cut her off. I know your type. Preying on vulnerable, wealthy men, worming your way into their lives. That's enough. Nick's voice rang out, stronger than Serenity had heard it since he woke up. You will not speak to her that way, Mother. Serenity is here because I want her here, because she was the only one who treated me like a person when the rest of the world, including my own family, had written me off. Eleanor's face went pale. Nicholas, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, he interrupted. Now, you have 2 choices. You can accept Serenity's presence in my life, or you can leave. Either way, she stays. The room fell silent. Eleanor looked from her son to Serenity and back again, her expression calculating. This isn't over, she said finally, her voice cold. When you come to your senses, you'll see what she's really after. With that, she turned and stormed out. Serenity let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Nick, I don't want to come between you and your family. You're not, he assured her, reaching for her hand. They're doing that all by themselves. His fingers entwined with hers, warm and surprisingly strong. Thank you for coming back. As Serenity looked down at their joined hands, she knew she was crossing a line she had never intended to cross. But for the first time since Zoe's father had walked out on her, she felt something stir in her heart, something that both thrilled and terrified her. Because Nicholas Vale might be awake, but Serenity was the one who felt like she was waking up from a long, lonely sleep. Over the next few weeks, Nicholas made remarkable progress. With Serenity by his side, he went from barely being able to sit up on his own to taking his first shaky steps down the hospital corridor. You're pushing yourself too hard, Serenity cautioned, as she supported him, his arm heavy across her shoulders. I'm tired of that room, Nick replied, his breathing labored but determined. Tired of being weak. Recovery takes time, she reminded him gently. You were asleep for almost a year, remember? He looked down at her, his blue eyes intense. "I've lost enough time already, Serenity. I don't want to waste another minute." Something in his voice made her heart flutter. She had been trying to maintain professional boundaries, but it was getting harder each day. The way he looked at her, the way he seemed to light up when she entered the room, the way he remembered every detail she had ever shared with him during his coma. It was unlike anything she had ever experienced. "Let's get you back to your room before Dr. Peterson sees us overdoing it," she said, steering him around. "Spoil sport," he teased, but allowed her to guide him back. When they reached his room, she helped him into the chair by the window rather than the bed. He insisted on sitting up as much as possible now. "There's something I want to ask you," Nick said as she checked his pulse. "What's that?" "Tell me about the day you started working here. The first day you came into my room." Serenity's hands stilled. "Why do you want to know about that?" "I don't remember it," he said simply. "I want to know everything about you, about us." And that's where it started. Serenity sat on the edge of the bed facing him. "It was nothing special. Nurse Wilcox told me I'd been reassigned to you. I was late that morning because Zoe's shoelace broke." "And when you saw me?" She hesitated. "I thought you looked sad even in your sleep. The room felt cold, so I opened the curtains and started talking to you while I worked. I didn't think you could hear me, I just couldn't stand the silence." Nick reached for her hand. "You saved me, you know." "The doctors saved you," she corrected, trying to ignore the warmth of his touch. "They kept my body alive. You kept my soul alive." His thumb traced small circles on her palm. "Every time I wanted to let go, to just drift away. Into the darkness, your voice brought me back." Serenity gently pulled her hand away. "Nick, we shouldn't—" The door opened and Eleanor Vale walked in, followed by a stern-looking man in an expensive suit. Eleanor's eyes narrowed at their closeness, but she forced a tight smile. "Nicholas, darling, you're looking stronger," she said, kissing the air near his cheek. "This is Walter Hammond, our family attorney." Nick's expression hardened. "What is this about, Mother?" Walter stepped forward, opening his briefcase. "Mr. Vale, I've prepared the paperwork to challenge the power of attorney your parents currently." "Hold, as you requested." Eleanor's smile disappeared. "Nicholas, this is unnecessary. Everything we've done has been for your benefit." "Including trying to keep Serenity away from me?" Nick asked coolly. Eleanor's gaze flicked to Serenity. "Miss Blake, would you excuse us? This is a family matter." "She stays," Nick said firmly. "Walter, proceed." The attorney looked uncomfortable, but continued. "The medical evaluation conducted yesterday indicates you're of sound mind and improving physically. There's no reason the court won't reinstate your independence." "You had him evaluated without telling us?" Eleanor's voice rose. "Nicholas, you're still recovering. You're not ready to take on the stress of running your company or making major decisions." "That's for me to decide, not you," Nick replied. "Walter, how soon can this be finalized? The hearing is scheduled for next week. Given your medical progress and Dr. Peterson's support, it should be straightforward." Eleanor's face flushed with anger. "This is her influence, isn't it?" She pointed at Serenity. "She's been filling your head with nonsense, turning you against your own family." "Mother, stop," Nick said wearily. "This has nothing to do with Serenity and everything to do with you and Father trying to control my life. We're trying to protect you," Eleanor insisted. "You wake up after a year, confused and vulnerable, and suddenly you're fixated on this nurse's aide. It's not natural, Nicholas." Serenity stood up. "Mrs. Vale, I've never tried to influence Nicholas in any way. My only concern is his recovery." "Oh, please," Eleanor scoffed. "We all know what you're after. A poor single mother from Queens suddenly has the ear of one of the richest men in New York. Don't insult my intelligence." Nick's hands gripped the arms of his chair. "That's enough, Mother. You know nothing about Serenity or what she means to me." "What she means to you?" Eleanor repeated, her voice rising. "You've been conscious for less than a month. What could she possibly mean to you?" "Everything," Nick said quietly. "She means everything to me." The room fell silent. Serenity felt her cheeks burning as Eleanor stared at her son in shock. "You can't be serious," Eleanor finally said. "I've never been more serious about anything in my life," Nick replied. "Now, unless you're here to support my recovery, I think this visit is over. Eleanor looked like she might argue further, but Walter touched her arm. Mrs. Vale, perhaps we should continue this discussion later. With one last cold look at Serenity, Eleanor allowed herself to be led from the room. When the door closed, Serenity turned to Nick. You shouldn't have said that. Why not? It's the truth. Nick, you don't even know me, she protested. Not really. He shook his head. That's where you're wrong. I know you better than anyone. For almost a year, all I had was your voice, your stories, your kindness. I know how you sing off-key when... You think no one's listening. I know you secretly love those trashy romance novels you pretend to make fun of. I know you worry about being enough for Zoe. Tears pricked at Serenity's eyes. This isn't fair. I didn't know you could hear me. But I did, he said softly. And I fell in love with your soul long before I ever saw your face. Serenity took a step back. Don't say things like that. Your mother is right. You're still recovering, still confused. Do I look confused to you? Nick challenged, his gaze steady. Serenity, I've spent the last year in darkness with only your voice to guide me home. Now that I'm here, now that I can finally see you, touch you, speak to you, you want me to pretend that meant nothing. I'm your care aide, she reminded him. It's my job to take care of you. Is that all this is to you, a job? The question hung in the air between them. Serenity couldn't bring herself to lie, but the truth terrified her. I have to check on my other patients, she said finally, turning toward the door. Serenity, Nick called after her. I'm not giving up on you, on us. I've been given a second chance at life, and I'm not wasting it. She paused, her hand on the doorknob. Get some rest, Nick. I'll be back for your afternoon therapy. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Serenity went through her duties mechanically, her mind replaying Nick's words. Love? How could he love her? It made no sense. She was nobody, just a single mother struggling to make ends meet. And he was Nicholas Vale, tech billionaire, a man whose face had been on the cover of Fortune magazine. As her shift ended, Serenity found Cassie waiting for her by the nurse's station. My mother's on the warpath, Cassie said without preamble. What happened today? Serenity sighed. Your brother told her I mean everything to him. Cassie winced. Oh boy, no wonder she's threatening to have you fired. Can she do that? Not once Nick gets the power of attorney reversed next week, but until then, Cassie hesitated. She's talking to the hospital board right now. Fear clutched at Serenity's heart. I can't lose this job, Cassie. Zoe depends on me. Nick won't let that happen, Cassie assured her. Trust me. But the next morning, Serenity was called to the administrator's office before she could even reach Nick's room. Miss Blake, the administrator said gravely, we have a situation. Serenity's stomach knotted. What kind of situation? Mrs. Vale has expressed concerns about the nature of your relationship with her son. She believes you've crossed professional boundaries. That's not true, Serenity protested. I've done nothing inappropriate. The administrator looked uncomfortable. Nevertheless, until Mr. Vale's hearing next week, Mrs. Vale retains decision-making authority. She's requested you be placed on administrative leave. You're suspending me? Serenity's voice shook. On what grounds? It's temporary, he assured her, just until the legal situation resolves. And if I refuse, then I'd have no choice but to terminate your employment entirely. Serenity closed her eyes, thinking of Zoe, of their rent due next week, of the electricity bill she'd just received. Do I at least get to say goodbye to my patients? Mrs. Vale was very specific that you not have contact with her son. Tears of frustration burned behind Serenity's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Fine, administrative leave it is. As she cleaned out her locker, Tanya found her. What's going on? There's a new aide assigned to Vale's room and he's raising hell about it. His mother had me suspended, Serenity said bitterly. That witch, Tanya muttered. What are you going to do? What can I do? I need this job. I'll wait until his hearing next week and hope he can get me reinstated. Tanya squeezed her shoulder. For what it's worth, I've never seen a man look at a woman the way that billionaire looks at you. If that's not real, nothing is. Serenity made it all the way to the bus stop before the tears finally came. She sat on the bench, her bag of personal items beside her, and let herself cry. Not just for the job, but for Nick, for the way her heart had leapt when he'd said he loved her, for the impossible dream that someone like him could want someone like her. Her phone buzzed with a text from Cassie. "Nick knows. He's furious. Don't worry." Easy for her to say, Serenity thought. Cassie had never worried about paying bills or feeding a child on a single income. When she arrived home hours earlier than usual, Zoe was still at school. The apartment felt empty and too quiet. Serenity sat on the couch trying to figure out what to do. Her savings would cover next week's rent. But after that, a knock at the door startled her. Thinking it might be Cassie again, she opened it without checking first. Marcus Vale stood in her hallway, looking as out of place as his sister had. "Mr. Vale," Serenity said coldly, "what do you want?" "May I come in?" he asked, his voice neutral. She hesitated, then stepped aside. Unlike Nick and Cassie, Marcus had never shown her any kindness. During Nick's coma, he had visited only when cameras were present, always treating Serenity like she was invisible. "I'll get right to the point," Marcus said, remaining standing in the middle of her small living room. "My mother is upset, my father is worried, and my brother is making threats he can't possibly back up in his condition. And I'm here to offer a solution." He reached into his suit jacket and pulled out an envelope. "This is a cashier's check for $500,000. Serenity stared at the envelope. "What? It's yours," Marcus continued. "In exchange for your resignation from Manhattan Care Center and your agreement to have no further contact with my brother." Anger flared in Serenity's chest. "You're trying to buy me off?" "I'm offering you a way out," Marcus corrected. "Let's be realistic, Miss Blake. You're a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. This money could change your life, send your daughter to the best schools, buy a real home, provide security you've never had. In exchange for abandoning your brother when he needs me most? When he's asking for me?" Marcus sighed. "Nicholas is confused. The trauma of the coma, the shock of waking up, he's latched onto you because you were there. Once he's fully recovered and back in the real world, whatever he thinks he feels for you will fade." "You don't know that," Serenity said, her voice low. "I know my brother," Marcus insisted. "I know our world. And trust me, you don't belong in it." Serenity stepped to the door and opened it. "Get out." "Don't be foolish," Marcus said, holding out the envelope. "Think of your daughter." "I am thinking of my daughter," Serenity replied, her voice steady, despite the trembling in her hands. "I'm teaching her that some things can't be bought. Dignity, self-respect, love." "Love?" Marcus repeated with a humorless laugh. "Is that what you think this is?" "You've known my conscious brother for less than a month." "I've known him for a year," Serenity corrected. "And unlike you, I was there every day. Now please leave." Marcus placed the envelope on her coffee table. "The offer stands for 24 hours. After that, my mother will make sure you never work in healthcare in this city again." After he left, Serenity stared at the envelope. $500,000. It was more money than she would earn in 10 years. It could change everything for Zoe. But the thought of never seeing Nick again, of him waking up to find her gone without a word, made her physically ill. She was still sitting there when her neighbor dropped Zoe off from school. "Mama!" Zoe exclaimed, running to hug her. "Why are you home? Are you sick?" Serenity forced a smile. "No, baby, I just had to take some time off work." "Is your sick man better?" Zoe asked. She had heard all about Mr. Nick, who had been asleep for a long time and then woke up. "He's getting better," Serenity said, smoothing Zoe's curly hair. "How about we make cookies? Would you like that?" As they mixed the cookie dough, Serenity tried to focus on the present moment, Zoe's laughter, the simple joy of baking together. But her mind kept drifting to Nick, to the hospital, to the envelope still sitting untouched on her coffee table. That night, after Zoe was asleep, there was another knock at her door. Expecting Marcus again, Serenity opened it, ready for a fight. Instead, Nick stood there, leaning heavily on a cane, with Cassie beside him supporting his other arm. "Nick!" Serenity gasped. "What are you doing here? You shouldn't be out of the hospital." "I signed myself out," he said, his face pale but determined. "Against medical advice. Are you crazy? You're not strong enough yet." "I'm strong enough for what matters," he replied. "May I come in?" Cassie helped him to the couch, then stepped back. "I'll wait in the car," she told her brother. "Don't overdo it." After she left, Serenity stood staring at Nick, unable to believe he was really sitting in her tiny apartment, looking strangely at home despite the incongruity of his expensive clothes against her worn furniture. "For you shouldn't be here," she said finally. "I had to see you," he replied, "to make sure you're okay." "I'm fine." "Liar," he said with a small smile. "I know my brother came to see you today." Serenity's eyes widened. "How did you know that?" "Because I know my family," Nick said tiredly. "When they want something, they'll do whatever it takes to get it. Right now, they want you gone." Her eyes flicked to the envelope still on the coffee table. Nick followed her gaze. "Ah," he said. "I see. He made you an offer. $500,000 to never see you again," Serenity admitted. Something flashed in Nick's eyes. Pain, anger, resignation. And I told him to get out of my apartment. The tension seemed to drain from Nick's body. "You turned it down?" "Of course I did," Serenity said, finally sitting beside him. "I would never do that to you." Nick reached for her hand. "Even though it could change your life? Give Zoe everything you've ever wanted for her? Some things are more important than money, Nick." She squeezed his hand. "But you still shouldn't be here. You need to be in the hospital, recovering." "I need to be wherever you are," he corrected. "Serenity, when I woke up and they told me you'd been suspended because of me, because of what I said to my mother, I couldn't stand it." "It's not your fault," she assured him. "It is," he insisted, "but I'm going to fix it. My hearing has been moved up to tomorrow. Once I have legal control again, no one can keep you away from me, from your job, from anything." "Your family isn't going to give up that easily," Serenity warned him. "Let them try," Nick said, his voice hardening. "I've spent the last year trapped in darkness. I'm not spending another day separated from the woman who brought me back to the light." Before Serenity could respond, a small voice came from the hallway. "Mama, who are you talking to?" They both turned to see Zoe standing in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes sleepily. "Zoe, honey, this is Mr. Nick," Serenity said. "The one I told you about." Zoe's eyes widened. "The sleeping man who woke up, like Sleeping Beauty," Nick chuckled. "Something like that, yes." Zoe approached cautiously, studying him with the directness only a child can manage. "Did my mama's voice wake you up? She said she talked to you every day." "Yes," Nick said seriously. "Your mom's voice guided me home." Zoe nodded, satisfied with this answer. "Are you going to marry my mama now? In the stories, the prince always marries the princess after she wakes him up." "Zoe!" Serenity exclaimed, mortified. "That's not... Mr. Nick isn't..." "I would be honored to marry your mother," Nick interrupted, his eyes never leaving Serenity's shocked face. "If she'll have me..." "Nick," Serenity whispered, "you don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying," he replied. "I've had a year of darkness to think about what matters in life. And it's not money or status or what my family thinks. It's love. It's connection. It's you." "You need to go back to the hospital," she said, standing up. "You're still recovering, still confused." "I'm not confused," Nick insisted. "But if you need time, I'll give you time. Just promise me you won't take my brother's money. Promise me you'll wait until after the hearing tomorrow before you make any decisions." Serenity looked at him, at this man who had somehow heard her voice through the darkness, who had fought his way back to life, who was now fighting his family for her. "I promise," she said softly. Nick smiled, relief evident in his eyes. "That's all I ask, for now." As Cassie helped him back to the car, Nick turned to look at Serenity once more. "Tomorrow," he said. "Everything changes tomorrow." Watching the car drive away, Serenity knew he was right. Tomorrow would change everything, for better or worse, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, fairy tales could come true after all. The courtroom was packed. News of Nicholas Vale's hearing had leaked to the press, and reporters crowded the hallways outside. Serenity sat in the back row, trying to be invisible. She had dressed in her best outfit, a simple navy blue dress she usually saved for job interviews. Nick sat at the front with his lawyer, Walter Hammond. He looked pale but determined in his tailored suit. Every few minutes he would turn to scan the crowd until he found Serenity, then smile reassuringly. On the other side of the courtroom, Eleanor and James Vale sat with Marcus and their team of lawyers. Eleanor kept shooting cold glances toward Serenity. "All rise," the bailiff called as the judge entered. The hearing moved quickly. Dr. Peterson testified that Nick was of sound mind and improving physically every day. The hospital's neurologist confirmed there was no cognitive impairment from the coma. Then it was Nick's turn to speak. "Mr. Vale," the judge said, "can you tell the court why you believe the power of attorney should be reversed?" Nick stood, leaning slightly on his cane. "Your Honor, my parents acted in what they believed was my best interest while I was unable to speak for myself, and I'm grateful for that. But I'm awake now. I can make my own decisions, and some of those decisions are different from what my family wants for me." "Such as?" the judge prompted. Nick's eyes found Serenity. "Such as who I want in my life, such as how I want to live the second chance I've been given." Eleanor's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, Mr. Vale has been conscious for less than a month after a traumatic brain injury. His sudden fixation on a care aide who had access to him during his vulnerable state raises serious concerns about undue influence." "Objection," Walter Hammond called. "There's no evidence of undue influence." "Sustained," the judge said. "Continue." "Mr. Vale." Nick straightened his shoulders. "Your Honor, I spent nearly a year in darkness. The doctors call it a coma, but I was aware, not all the time, but enough. I could hear voices. Most people spoke about me, not to me. They discussed my condition, my company, my money. Only one person spoke to me like I was still there. Only one person treated me with dignity when I couldn't speak for myself." His gaze remained steady on Serenity. "That person helped bring me back, not because she wanted anything from me, but because she believed every human being deserves care and respect. That's not undue influence, that's humanity at its finest." The courtroom was silent. Even Eleanor seemed affected by her son's words. After a brief recess, the judge returned with his decision. "Having reviewed all testimony and medical evidence, I find Nicholas Vale to be of sound mind and capable of managing his own affairs. The power of attorney is hereby terminated, effective immediately." A murmur swept through the courtroom. Nick's shoulders sagged with relief as Walter Hammond clapped him on the back. Eleanor sat frozen, her face unreadable. Serenity slipped out before the crowd could disperse. She needed air, needed to think. Everything was happening so fast. In the span of a month, her entire life had been turned upside down. What if Nick regretted his grand gestures once the emotion of the moment passed? What if, once he returned to his real life, to board meetings and business trips and society galas, he realized a single mother from Queens didn't fit into his world? She was standing on the courthouse steps when she heard someone call her name. Turning, she saw Eleanor Vale approaching, looking oddly diminished despite her perfect appearance. "Mrs. Vale," Serenity said cautiously. "Miss Blake." Eleanor stopped a few feet away. "I believe we need to talk. I'm not sure we have anything to say to each other." Eleanor sighed, suddenly looking every one of her 60-plus years. "I owe you an apology." Serenity blinked in surprise. "Excuse me?" "I judged you unfairly," Eleanor continued. "I assumed the worst because experience has taught me to be suspicious of anyone who gets close to my children. I never wanted anything from Nick except his recovery," Serenity said. "I know that now." Eleanor's voice softened slightly. "I watched you in that courtroom today. You weren't looking at him like he was Nicholas Vale, billionaire. You were looking at him like he was just Nick." Serenity didn't know how to respond. After all the hostility, Eleanor's sudden change of heart seemed too good to be true. "Nicholas has always been different from Marcus," Eleanor continued. "More idealistic, less concerned with appearances. His father and I tried to protect him from people who would take advantage of that. Perhaps we protected him too much." "He doesn't need protection from me," Serenity said. "No," Eleanor agreed. "I believe he doesn't." She straightened her shoulders. My son loves you, Miss Blake. That much is clear to anyone with eyes. The question is, what do you intend to do about it? Before Serenity could answer, the courthouse doors opened and Nick emerged, supported by Cassie. When he saw Serenity with his mother, he hurried down the steps as quickly as his weakened legs would allow. Serenity, Mother, is everything all right? His voice was tense. Everything's fine, Nicholas, Eleanor said. Miss Blake and I were just having a long overdue conversation. She turned to go, then paused. Sunday dinner is at 7, as always. I expect both of you to be there. With that, she walked away, leaving Nick and Serenity staring after her in shock. Did my mother just invite you to dinner? Nick asked incredulously. I think so, Serenity said, equally confused. Nick laughed, the sound bright and free. Wonders never cease. He took her hand. The hearing's over. I'm legally myself again. I'm happy for you, she said sincerely. Does that mean you'll come back to work? The hospital administrator already called to offer you your position back, with a raise. Serenity hesitated. Nick, we need to talk about whatever this is. Between us, it's all happening so fast. His smile faded. You're having doubts? Of course I am, she admitted. You're Nicholas Vale. Your face has been on magazine covers. You run $1 billion company and I'm the woman who saved me. He finished for her. The woman whose voice guided me home when I was lost in darkness. But is that enough? Once. You're back in your real life. Will you still feel the same way? Nick looked at her thoughtfully. You're afraid this is just gratitude or confusion, that once I'm fully recovered, I'll change my mind about you. Wouldn't you be afraid? In my position? She asked softly. Yes, he admitted, I would. They stood in silence for a moment, the sounds of the city swirling around them. What if, Nick finally said, I prove it to you, not with words or grand gestures, but with time, real time together, getting to know each other properly. How? Come. Back to work at the hospital. Be my care aide again, officially. Help me complete my recovery and let me court you properly the way you deserve. Court me? Serenity couldn't help but smile. Who says court anymore? A man who wants to do things right, Nick replied seriously. A man who knows what he's found and isn't willing to risk losing it by rushing. The sincerity in his eyes made her heart skip. And what about your company? Your life? The company has survived without me for a year. It can wait a little longer. He squeezed her hand. Some things are more important than business meetings, like learning to walk properly again, like spending time with a certain 5-year-old who thinks I'm a fairy tale prince. Serenity laughed. Zoe has an active imagination. Zoe has excellent, a taste, Nick corrected with a grin. So what do you say? Will you give us the chance to see what this could be without rushing? Looking into his hopeful face, Serenity felt the last of her doubts begin to fade. Yes, she said simply. I'd like that. 3 months passed. True to his word, Nick took things slowly. He focused on his recovery, working with Serenity at the hospital during the day. In the evenings, he often joined her and Zoe for dinner in their small apartment, delighting in the simple home-cooked meals and Zoe's endless questions. On weekends, they went to the park, to children's museums, to the zoo, normal places where Nick could rebuild his strength and they could be together. Without pressure, he never pushed for more than Serenity was ready to give, content with hand-holding and the occasional kiss goodnight. Gradually, Serenity introduced him to her world, her childhood friend Letitia, who had been there through her pregnancy, her elderly neighbor Mr. Guzman, who watched Zoe sometimes, the community garden where she volunteered. In turn, Nick began sharing his world. He took her to his penthouse apartment, surprisingly warm and filled with books. He introduced her to his closest friends, who welcomed her without judgment. He even brought her to his company headquarters, proudly showing her the technology they were developing. You're good for him, Cassie told Serenity one afternoon as they watched Nick playing with Zoe in the park. I've never seen him this happy, even before the accident. He's good for us too, Serenity admitted. Zoe adores him. And her mother? Cassie asked with a knowing smile. Serenity blushed. Her mother is cautiously optimistic. The Sunday dinners at the Vale mansion were still awkward, but improving. Eleanor made an effort, asking about Zoe and taking a genuine interest in Serenity's background. James Vale was quieter, but unfailingly polite. Only Marcus remained cold, though even he had stopped making openly hostile remarks. After 4 months, Nick was officially discharged from the hospital's rehabilitation program. He could walk without a cane now, though he still tired more easily than before the accident. "What happens now?" Serenity asked as they left the hospital on his final day. "You don't need a care aide anymore." "No," Nick agreed, taking her hand. "But I still need you more than ever." That weekend, he took her to dinner at an elegant restaurant overlooking Central Park. He seemed nervous, checking his pocket repeatedly. "Is everything okay?" she asked after he'd checked his watch for the 3rd time. "Perfect," he assured her. "Just perfect." He took a deep breath. "Serenity, these past months have been the happiest of my life." "Mine too," she admitted with a smile. "When I was in that coma, trapped inside myself, your voice was my lifeline. You treated me with dignity when I was at my most vulnerable. You saw me. Not my money, not my name, just me." He reached across the table for her hand. "I told you I would court you properly, that I would give you time to be sure of your feelings. I hope I've done that." Serenity's heart began to race as Nick reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I'm not asking because I'm grateful or confused or anything else. I'm asking because I love you, because you and Zoe have become my family, my home." He opened the box to reveal not a ring but a key. "This isn't what you think," he said quickly. "A key?" Serenity asked, confused. "To a house," Nick explained. "Not a mansion, not a showpiece. A real home, with a yard for Zoe to play in and good schools nearby. A place where you could both be safe and happy." He took another deep breath. "And if you wanted, a place where I could be too as your husband." Tears filled Serenity's eyes. "Nick, I'm not asking you to leave your job or change who you are," he continued quickly. "I love you exactly as you are. I'm just asking for the chance to build a life with you, the kind of life everyone deserves, filled with love and respect and kindness." Serenity looked at the key, at the earnest hope in Nick's eyes. All her life she had been the strong one, the responsible one, the one who took care of others. For the first time, someone wanted to take care of her too, not because she was weak, but because she was loved. "Yes," she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Yes, to all of it." The joy that lit up Nick's face was answer enough, but he pulled another box from his pocket, this one containing a simple but elegant diamond ring. As he slipped it onto her finger, the restaurant erupted in applause. Serenity looked up to see Cassie, Tanya from the hospital, and several of her other friends watching from nearby tables. "You planned this," she accused with a laugh. "Guilty," Nick admitted. "I wanted our friends to be here, and there's one more surprise." He nodded toward the entrance, where Zoe came running in, wearing a pretty new dress. "Mama, he asked you, didn't he? Did you say yes?" Zoe bounced excitedly. "He already asked me if he could be my dad, and I said yes last week." Serenity looked at Nick in shock. "You asked her permission?" "Of course," he said seriously. "She's part of the package deal. The best part, some might say." "Hey, Serenity," protested with a laugh. "Tied for best," Nick amended, pulling Zoe into a hug. 6 months later, Serenity stood in the garden of their new home, a beautiful but not ostentatious house in a good neighborhood with plenty of room for Zoe to play and grow. Guests mingled on the lawn, celebrating not just Nick and Serenity's wedding, but also the opening of the Vale Rehabilitation Center, a state-of-the-art facility dedicated to coma patients and long-term care. "Penny for your thoughts," Nick said, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. "Just thinking about how much has changed in a year and a half," she replied, leaning back against him. "From caring for you in that hospital room to this. Do you miss it? Being a care aide?" Serenity smiled. "Sometimes. But I love running the training program at the new center, teaching others to see patients as people first, medical cases second. It feels right." "You've changed so many lives," Nick said, kissing her temple. "Mine most of all." Across the lawn, Zoe was teaching Cassie some complicated hand-clapping game. Eleanor and James were chatting with Serenity's neighbor, Mr. Guzman. Even Marcus had shown up, though he still looked uncomfortable around so much genuine emotion. "They're really trying," Serenity observed, nodding toward her new in-laws. "They're learning," Nick corrected, "just like I'm still learning to be a good husband and father." "You're doing pretty well so far," she assured him, turning in his arms to face him. "Only because I had an excellent teacher." His blue eyes, once clouded by Coma, now shone clear and bright with love. "You taught me what matters, Serenity. Dignity, kindness, seeing people for who they really are. And you taught me to believe in second chances," she replied, "to believe that sometimes the impossible happens, like a billionaire falling in love with the woman who changed his diapers," Nick teased. Serenity laughed. "Something like that, yes." "I'm the luckiest man alive," Nick said, suddenly serious. "Not because I woke up from that coma, but because I woke up to find you." As they joined their guests hand in hand, Serenity thought about the long journey that had brought them here. From those quiet hospital room conversations, when she talked to an unresponsive man simply because she believed everyone deserved dignity, to this moment, surrounded by family and friends, loved beyond measure. They had both been sleeping, in their own ways. Nick in his coma, Serenity in her carefully constructed life of work and motherhood, afraid to dream of more. But now they were both awake, both alive in a way neither had been before, and the life stretching before them was brighter than either could have imagined. 1 year later, Serenity sat in the nursery of their home, rocking their newborn son. James, while Zoe, now 7, read him a story from her favorite picture book. Nick stood in the doorway watching them, his face filled with a contentment that still amazed her. "He's finally asleep," Serenity whispered, as the baby's eyes fluttered closed. Nick came to kneel beside them, gently touching his son's tiny hand. "He has your determination, fighting sleep like it's his job." "And your lungs," Serenity said with a tired smile. "I've never heard a baby cry so loudly." "That's because he knows what he wants and isn't afraid to ask for it," Nick said proudly. "Just like his mother." Zoe closed her book. "Can I show him my new drawing tomorrow?" "Of course, sweetheart," Nick said. "He loves your drawings. He's—" "Their baby, Dad," Zoe said with the exasperated wisdom of a 7-year-old. "He can't even see colors yet." "Then we'll just have to describe them to him," Nick replied seriously. "Every shade and hue, until he can see them for himself." As Nick tucked Zoe into bed and Serenity placed the sleeping baby in his crib, she thought about how far they had come. The Vale Rehabilitation Center was thriving, with a special focus on communication with coma patients. Nick had restructured his company to allow him more time with his family. And Serenity had found a balance between her work at the center and her life at home. Later, as they lay in bed together, Nick pulled her close. "Happy?" "More than I ever thought possible," she admitted. "Sometimes I still can't believe this is real." "I pinch myself every morning," Nick confessed, "just to make sure I haven't dreamed you up." Serenity smiled in the darkness. "You're stuck with me, Nicholas Vale, for better or worse." "That's the best news I've ever heard," he murmured, already half asleep. "The very best news." As his breathing deepened, Serenity thought about all the patients she'd cared for over the years, all the quiet words she'd spoken to people who couldn't respond, all the dignity she'd tried to give when others had given up. She had never expected anything in return. She had simply done what felt right, what felt human. But life had given her this gift anyway, this man who had heard her voice in the darkness, who had remembered her kindness, who had chosen her not, despite her ordinary background, but because of the extraordinary heart that came with it. "Sweet dreams," she whispered, just as she had every night in that hospital room. And this time, as he had every night since he'd awakened, Nick squeezed her hand in response, a silent promise that he was here, that he was listening, that he would always find his way back to her. No matter what darkness might come, they would face it together, wide awake and completely alive.